half a month now, a ceasefire has, in theory, been in place between Israel and Lebanon. For a while, it largely held, with any fighting, at least at a much lower level than before. Now, though, throughout the end of last week and the weekend, Israel pushing further into the country. Israel, after days of airstrikes and some intense fighting in nearby villages, taking over a strategic mounting topped with a Crusader-built castle in the deepest incursion into the country in more than a quarter century. Lebanon saying at least 8 more people have been killed and 19 wounded. Well, Philip Turle, International Affairs Editor, is joining me here on set. Philip, let's talk about Israel first of all, arguing that it needs to advance to attack Hezbollah bases. On Sunday, it captured this Beaufort castle, as it's called. How is that going down with the Americans, though? And Donald Trump, he's trying to find a way out of the Iran war, isn't he?
It's all very complicated for the Americans, Stuart. First of all, Beaufort Castle, this is a largely symbolic capture. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You've seen the pictures on screen of what the castle looks like. So it's a very old monument that is not going to be much good when it comes to being a strategic stronghold for the army. But it was used as a base during the last capture of southern Lebanon by Israeli forces between 1982 and 2000. This is the Lebanese Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, has accused Israel of a scorched earth policy. Just to be clear about what scorched earth policy is, you can see it written up beside me. It's been banned by the Geneva Convention of 1977. It says it's prohibited to attack, destroy, remove, or render useless objects indispensable to the survival of the civilian population, such as foodstuffs, crops, livestock, drinking water, installations, and supplies. All of this at a time when Benjamin Netanyahu describes this as a decisive shift as the increase in the advance of Israeli forces in southern Lebanon continues. But at the same time, the Lebanese Prime Minister calling this a collective punishment, basically. That's why he's describing all of this as a scorched earth policy. But the bottom line here is that it's not sure that Israel is actually winning this war right now. They are subject to increasing drone attacks by Hezbollah. There have been protests growing in the northern communities of Israel about the fact that the army is unable to protect them. There is military criticism over the soldiers, their vulnerability to drone attacks. The Hezbollah is remaining intact, doesn't seem to be weakened in the last few weeks, and there doesn't seem to be a realistic plan for disarmament. So this is very symbolic, this capture of this chateau, but at the same time, it doesn't look as though Israel is getting any closer to defeating Hezbollah, which of course is its main aim. Now, as far as the United States, that question you asked, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, spoke to both the Lebanese Prime Minister, or the Lebanese President, Joseph Aoun, and the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, yesterday. Even there is a difference of opinion, because the Israelis are saying, well, we will carry on until Hezbollah stops firing, and Hezbollah is saying, well, we will stop firing once Israel withdraws its forces from southern Lebanon. So it's a bit like both sides are waiting for the other to move first. There are more discussions planned this week, tomorrow and Wednesday in Washington between the two sides. No diplomatic relations between Israel and Lebanon. Discussions that took place in the Pentagon on Friday didn't really lead to anything, so I think there's a lot of skepticism that these upcoming talks this week are going to do the same.
Philip, let's talk about the French position here. The French Foreign Minister, Jean-Noël Barrot, calling for an urgent meeting of the UN Security Council to discuss Israel's latest incursion into Lebanon. That, of course, as Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday ordered his troops to go even further in a bid to take over more Hezbollah strongholds.
Yeah, I think there's definite growing frustration with the way that Israel doesn't appear to be abiding by any international rules in all of this. And certainly, as the death toll goes up, 3,412 people are killed since the 2nd of March when these current clashes started. That's according to the Lebanese Health Ministry. 1.2 million people displaced since then. A truce which came in on the 17th of April, which has widely not been adhered to. So that's why Jean-Noël Barrot yesterday said nothing can justify the prolongation of Israel's military operations deeper and deeper into Lebanese territory. That was echoed a few hours later by the French President Emmanuel Macron, who said that it's essential that an agreement be reached between the two sides. Well, there's going to be a meeting of the UN Security Council. I don't think this is going to go very far, basically because since 2024, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has been persona non grata in Israel. He's not allowed to travel to the country. Israel has systematically targeted UN facilities and buildings and destroyed most UN buildings in Palestine, and also bombed the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Gaza Strip. So all of that leads one to believe that there's not much respect for what the UN is doing, and it's also attacked UN peacekeepers in Lebanon in a clear breach of international law as it moves further north up towards Nabatea, which is where many say the Israelis now have their eyes on this town as trying to take control of that. On top of that, the United Nations has added Israel to a blacklist of countries committing sexual violence in conflict zones. That's also angered the ambassador to the United Nations from Israel, who's basically said, as far as the Secretary General Antonio Guterres is concerned, we are done with this Secretary General. So that's why I think there's many feeling quite sceptical about the fact that these talks by the UN Security Council are going to actually lead to anything.
Finally, Philip, concerning the Iran war, I mean, are we any closer to any kind of peace deal? Last week's agreement for a memorandum of understanding, we've just been hearing, in fact, in the last half hour or so, I mentioned it earlier on the programme, spokesman from the Iranian Foreign Ministry, saying Iran says there are delays due to a lack of trust, constant change of US position, and those Israeli incursions.
Well, putting it in context, Donald Trump is sort of living through his own version of the film Groundhog Day. Every time he wakes up and he's back to square one again, they're going to start the negotiations, and he always comes up with the same statement, which we've just had again. Iran really wants to make a deal, and it will be a good one for the USA and for those that are with us, being the US. But that's not the message coming out of Iran. So they still seem to be very wide apart. The war in Lebanon is not helping anything because one of the conditions that Iran has put forward is an end to the fighting in Lebanon. Remember, Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy group. That doesn't seem to be on the cards anytime soon. There have also been skirmishes overnight, US bombing Iranian radar and drone control sites in Iran, Iran reportedly launching attacks in the direction of Kuwait. So we don't really know where this is going. I think what is clear on Donald Trump's part is that he's been posting on Truth Social, Iran must never have a nuclear weapon or a bomb. The Strait of Hormuz must be reopened and to unrestricted traffic going through, and any mines in the Strait must be terminated. But Iran has said, well, as far as we're concerned, there's no discussion on the nuclear program because we are doing just this for peaceful process and not for a weapon. So still, I think, quite a big gap between the two sides as to moving forward.